Hello everyone, how are we doing? Here for the Monza Grand Prix weekend, although we were live yesterday. So here again for the Monza Grand Prix weekend. Hello everybody in the chat already. Sally, Lofi's in there, YSVYN, hello mate, how you doing? Devetro, Kiefer, hello, Romeo, how's it going? Kiefer, quick question to everyone. There's a Formula 1 champion that deserved a villainous theme song. Which F1 champion deserved a villain theme song? I feel like most Formula 1 champions become villainous in the fact that we want there to be competitive racing, right? So there was a time where Michael Schumacher was hated because he was so dominant. There was a time where Sebastian Vettel was, whenever we saw that finger, everybody was like, God's sake, Sebastian, stop winning. So I feel like every Formula 1 champion goes through a phase of having a villainous arc. Generally speaking, though, gotta be Fernando Alonso, isn't it? Gotta be Fernando Alonso. He loves being a villain. He absolutely, I think he just enjoys villainous behavior. So Fernando Alonso, for me, feels like the one that came straight to my head. Hello, Ace57, how you doing? Nathaniel's in the chat as well. Hello, Mr. Andreas, Jeff, Nicholas, Zach is weird, Dark One Deer, Horse, Dan on the Strings, cool name, Big Fan Dude. just three very generic words. Big Fan Dude, love it. How are we all feeling heading into the Monza Grand Prix weekend then? As I said, we were live yesterday. We talked through all of the upgrades that the teams were bringing for this weekend in Monza, as well as a few bits and pieces of the news that's happened over the course of the weekend. But even more news has now dropped. Although he managed to crash his car just 10 minutes into his free practice one debut with Mercedes, as expected, there was a lot of rumours that it was going to be happening this weekend. I mean, Toto Wolff didn't do himself many favours when he kind of hinted at it during the Netherlands, but it does feel like this one has been coming for a very, very long time. Kimi Antonelli will race for Mercedes in 2025. He will go in alongside George Russell, and they will make up the Mercedes team for next season. I thought straight off the bat, get your guys' thoughts and feelings on it. I did post a community tab post earlier on today, so we can have a little look at the replies on there as well. Oh, maybe not. Let me load the community tab. I love when Chrome just decides that it's not having it, and then it just decides it's not going to fit it on the screen. We're going to do that. There we go. A few of you kind of threw in your opinions, thoughts, feelings of the Kimi Antonelli news. Mercedes must have been really impressed with his crash, says Chris Downs. And yeah, it's been an awkward one, hasn't it? I feel like Toto Wolff kind of played it off quite nicely in that he said, I'd rather we need to make him slower than quicker, that kind of thing. But at the same time, 10 minutes into your Formula 1 debut, I feel like it was kind of Mercedes' fault, though, the crash. I said this after free practice 2 yesterday. Just the fact that you let him go out on a fresh set of soft compound tyres. You put really low fuel in the car. You effectively, 10 minutes into his Formula 1 debut, made him do a qualifying lap at the absolute top speed that he possibly could in a free practice 1 session on a very, very green track. The entire Monza circuit has been relayed. Also completely different, like the telemetry and the layout of that final sector is now completely different. And okay, he was 1 corner away from finishing the lap, but at the same time, I feel like it was kind of Mercedes' fault that crash happened more so than Kimi Antonelli's fault, which is weird to say because obviously Kimi Antonelli is, in charge of the car. But it felt like an odd choice to put him under so much pressure and give him that opportunity straight away. I hope the pressure doesn't get to him. Another kind of general feeling is a big move going in, replacing Lewis Hamilton, being that man. Obviously, an Italian driver on the grid. It's been too long. I agree, it has been too long. I feel like Italian drivers are one of those things that Well, actually, generally speaking, Ferrari drivers are not Italian. It's a bit of a weird complex, isn't it? They've never really been able to have an Italian driver, or at least in recent memory, an Italian driver being that spearhead of the Ferrari team. I feel like that would be one thing that we'd expect to see more often. But Italian drivers kind of here and there. You know, Antonio Giovinazzi, the last one, but was never really at a top team. This is the first time we've seen an Italian driver in a top team for a good chunk of time. Obviously, Antonio Giovinazzi nearly on the grid, but then crashed in Austin, so didn't manage to make it. But generally speaking, it's been fairly positive. You know, it's a lot of pressure on Kimi Antonelli. I think the pressure will come depending on how good the Mercedes car is for the rest of this season, and also how well George Russell starts next season. I thought Nico Rosberg's point was quite interesting. The fact that he said, you know, George Russell can't really win from this position. If he beats Antonelli, then Antonelli just, you know, is a rookie and therefore shouldn't beat George Russell. If Antonelli starts beating George Russell, everybody's going to be saying the opposite. You know, he's a rookie. George Russell should be beating him. How is George Russell not beating him after 6 years in Formula One? Like, there's no way of George Russell winning. If he beats Antonelli, he gets no praise for it. If he loses to Antonelli, it's absolutely catastrophic. So it's just a real weird scenario that George Russell's going to find himself in next season. But interesting to get your thoughts on it. Russell is not getting pole. Lando or Lewis? Interesting. What position will Colapinto get? We'll get to Colapinto, don't you worry. We'll get there. Michael Schumacher, 7-time world champion, replaced by Lewis, 7-time world champion for Kimi, 7-time world champion. I mean, I can see your line. I can see your trajectory there. The Mercedes link is there. 7-time world champion. Let's not put that kind of pressure on Kimi Antonelli yet, shall we? You know, let's start off, give him a couple of seasons, see where he fits into the Formula One sphere. But as people are saying in the chat, that does leave us with 2 seats left. Kimi Antonelli going into the Mercedes seat. Obviously, Lewis Hamilton going to Ferrari. We've got Jack Doohan going to Alpine. Carlos Sainz going to Williams. Hulkenberg going to Kick. Behrman and Ocon going into the Haas. Already, all of those drivers moving or joining teams. It's ridiculous that we have 7 driver changes for the 2025 season, and there's 2 that still could yet happen. Daniel Ricciardo, obviously in that RBC at the moment. Whether or not he'll stay there, we'll have to wait and see. There's a lot of talk about Liam Lawson, whether or not Liam Lawson's going to be able to get into that seat. I mean, it's so back and forth, isn't it? You know, one weekend, Christian Horner says, oh, Liam Lawson will be in a seat. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a Red Bull seat. Then it kind of comes back and Helmut Marko says, no, Liam Lawson's going to be in a Red Bull seat for 2025. We've got things lined up for him. It just doesn't seem like they've got a full understanding. I think that this one should be Liam, though. I'm guessing that that's going to end up being Liam Lawson, and I'm also guessing that this is going to end up being Bottas. Ooh, Bottas. But that's just my thoughts and feelings. So that would be 8 new drivers. If my predictions are correct, 8 new drivers onto the Formula One, 8 new drivers, into new Formula One teams. We've got Antonelli as a rookie. We've got Doohan as a rookie. We've got possibly Liam Lawson, although he's got 5 races experience, technically a rookie, and Ollie Behrman a rookie. So we'd have 4 rookies joining the Formula One grid, which would be absolutely insane. That is a lot of movement. Considering, remember, we had no driver swaps between 2023 and 2024. So this is a huge change. I guess that's been the snowball, right? The fact that we had 0 driver changes at the end of last season has meant that this season has been utter chaos. Let's see what you guys think. Hope Danny Rick gets Checo's seat. Yeah, of course, there's always the question mark next to Sergio Perez and whether or not he is going to be able to get there. Sauber Teo Pourchaire, Noah says in the chat. I think his time is just a little bit gone, unfortunately. I feel like he should have got a Formula One seat at some point, or at least, you know, had an opportunity to maybe show his colours a little bit more but had those few free practice sessions, didn't quite get there. Hadjar to VCub, that's the other one, isn't it? If Hadjar does end up winning the Formula 2 championship, obviously he can't go back into Formula 2 again, although I feel like they'll slot him into that Liam Lawson role as the test driver. I can almost see like, so basically what they've got to do is get rid of either Daniel Ricciardo or Sergio Perez. They've got to slot Liam Lawson into the full Formula 1 seat. Hadjar then goes up a step as well and goes into being the Red Bull and RB reserve. And then depends who they really want out of Formula 3. I guess Lindblad would be the choice, although he's a little bit young, isn't he? Someone's got to shuffle up into Formula 2 for Red Bull to take kind of Hadjar's position within that slot. Like, Red Bull have still got a plethora of drivers down the ranks. It's just they haven't got anyone perfectly in that position to go into that Red Bull seat, have they? Basically, if they'd have had Liam Lawson in that RB seat for the entirety of last season and not done the whole Nick de Vries thing, then maybe they'd be in a much better position moving forwards. But I just feel like that Nick de Vries move was so stupid and so odd that actually it doesn't really, it's so odd that it's had a massive impact on the rest of Red Bull and RB and slotting into who's going to go where. Tsunoda out of RB at the end of 2025, Hadjar and Lawson into RB for 2026. Exactly, Rocco. So that's the kind of step I'm thinking, to be honest with you. Either Perez or Ricciardo ends up leaving at the end of this season. Then at the end of next season, if Yuki Tsunoda does manage to get moved on, because I think he will, to be honest with you, if he wouldn't have had that contract extension for this season that Red Bull obviously put into fruition, I could have seen Yuki Tsunoda making a move this year, to be honest with you. But he already had that negotiation part in his contract where Red Bull could sign him for an additional season if they wanted to, and they activated that just before the Canadian Grand Prix, didn't they? So Yuki Tsunoda will be staying for next season. Junior Academy is cooked at Red Bull. I mean, they're about to possibly have a Formula 2 champion on their hands, so yes and no. Perez might be the GOAT heaven with Logan. Yeah, Logan Sargent's not getting back on the Formula 1 grid, is he? Neither's Kevin Magnussen, though. It does feel, you got to remember, Kimi Antonelli, Doohan, Lawson, Bottas, Behrman, all coming onto the grid. 4 rookies possibly coming onto the grid. Does mean we have to say goodbye to 4 drivers. As much as I'm very, very hyped about 4 new drivers coming onto the Formula 1 grid and seeing what they can do, it does mean the likes of probably Kevin Magnussen, looks like Zhou Guanyu, probably going to end up going either Perez or Ricciardo. Like, we are going to lose some good drivers. We are going to lose some loved drivers on the Formula 1 grid. But that is the cycle. Your career has to come to an end eventually. And Daniel Ricciardo's, for me, maybe coming towards it. Maybe Sergio Perez coming towards it. Kevin Magnussen, definitely. Zhou Guanyu. I kind of liked Zhou Guanyu to Haas, to be honest with you, but they've gone Esteban Ocon. So not going to be Zhou Guanyu in that seat. And instead, Esteban Ocon alongside Behrman. Alonso will retire in 2025. I think he's tired. That is an opportunity. That's maybe the Yuki seat then, right? So Yuki maybe goes in there alongside Fernando Alonso. That would then give Hadjar that seat there where Yuki Tsunoda would be. There's a lot of little predictions to be made, and I'll definitely be doing a 2026 driver predictions, but let's get the 2025 ones out of the way first before we delve into predicting who's going to be where in 2026. Although it is one of those videos that I feel like every Formula 1 YouTuber has to make at some point before the beginning of next season, don't they? They have to get involved and show that they've been predicting in one way or another, and then eventually it just doesn't come true. Thank you, Philippa, for subscribing to the channel. On subscribers, because we are now half an hour before we get into the qualifying session. Went live a little bit early today, mainly because I just fancied going live. It's been an absolutely horrendous morning. Shall I give you a little bit of inside baseball? My toilet started leaking. Never had that in my life. This is like the most adult thing that's happened to me in recent memory. So I had to get in there, get in the cistern, take apart the flush valve, look at the buoyancy, whatever it's called, adjust that. Got very, very complicated very, very quickly. And therefore, once that was done, I was like, you know what? I just want to have a chat to the people in my YouTube community. So I went live 15 minutes early, shoot me. But we are now into the actual time that I should have been live. Let's move away from Kimi Antonelli. As much as it is big news, we're going to be talking about it a lot over the next few weekends, aren't we? Because he's going to be in more free practice sessions. He's going to be running in various Mercedes machinery throughout the final half of the season. Of course, he's still in Formula 2, so we'll see where he actually slots into the Formula 2 championship and where he ends up. So we'll end up seeing where Kimi Antonelli is and talking about him a little bit more. I did want to highlight this graphic. I thought this was an interesting graphic that popped up during Free Practice 3. I know a lot of people don't watch Free Practice 3, and I don't regularly, but today I just had it on in the background, and I saw this graphic pop up. I thought it was very, very interesting. This is supposedly 2024's car performance from Bahrain to the Netherlands, comparing where everybody has shuffled in terms of race pace. And I thought it was quite interesting to see. Obviously, McLaren's maybe the easiest one to predict. They have had a stonking season, haven't they? Just, that upgrade from Miami and then all of the subsequent upgrades since the upgrade that they brought to the Netherlands. Everything just seems to click for McLaren right now. And I think they have that perfect balance between something working in the wind tunnel, going onto the car and working pretty much straight away. And that's where you want to be as a Formula One team, don't you? You want to have that perfect comparison moment where you're like, okay, this works in the wind tunnel. Will it work in real life? And the answer every single time for McLaren is yes. So that's why building that brand new wind tunnel and actually building the whole new sort of system that they've got in place for the wind tunnel, for the simulator as well, that whole plethora of new things that came into the McLaren team recently is starting to finally pay dividends, and the fact that they've completely reworked the structure in that team as well under Andrea Stella and everybody who's there. Be interesting to see how that plays out for next season. I think that they still need a couple of big acquisitions, if I'm honest with you, especially when you look at the likes of Williams and Ferrari and Mercedes all picking up quite big names. McLaren haven't quite been able to do that. So be interesting to see where McLaren end up and if they can continue this positive trajectory. Interesting here again, sort of Red Bull. I feel like we knew they'd gone backwards. I didn't expect it to be as much as a 10th, to be honest with you. I was maybe thinking 0.05, 0.06, kind of double that. Apparently 0.14 seconds, Red Bull really falling adrift of where they started the season. I thought everyone else had caught up as much as, Red Bull had fallen backwards. But I guess that is the problem that Red Bull have had recently. The fact that they haven't really trusted a lot of the upgrades that they brought. They ran the old floor in Zandvoort literally from the beginning of the season. I know that they only ran that for a couple of free practice sessions, but you don't really be wanting to go all the way back to the start of the season to try and work out what you've done wrong since then. And Red Bull are in that position right now. Mercedes are still tinkering, but interesting that they're now supposedly the third fastest car, because they definitely did not start the season there. And you can kind of see that the Ferrari was ahead. The Aston Martin was ahead initially. Even the McLaren kind of in and around where the Mercedes car was. So it's interesting to see that Mercedes kind of jumped up to third fastest because of the fall of Ferrari and Aston Martin, but also because they have been able to just keep that little positive trajectory moving forwards, the little incremental changes that have been able to make to that Mercedes car. That then does put a little bit of pressure on Kimi Antonelli, kind of talking of him. It does feel like the Mercedes car is still a little way off. You look at where the McLaren line is, the Red Bull line is, and then the Mercedes line. There is still a little chunk of time to make up from this graphic anyway, if Mercedes are going to be the fastest car out on track. But they can be the fastest on some circuits. And I think that's the thing. Red Bull are now struggling to be what they were last year, which was dominant in every single style of track. And McLaren are slightly moving towards that. But we again saw in Belgium just before the summer break that there are going to be tracks that don't quite click. And because... Ooh, that is horrendous. Because the Belgium Grand Prix was so good for Mercedes, I am expecting this Grand Prix in Monza to also be a very, very good one for them. Then you've got Ferrari falling backwards. The massive upgrade that came in Imola just didn't work for them. Interesting that they have brought a brand new floor this weekend in Monza, and that will be the floor that they kind of run to the end of the season. So it wouldn't surprise me if actually this jumps up almost maybe level with the Mercedes, maybe just behind the Mercedes car once they get that floor working, because the floor that they brought, the bouncing that they had was just ridiculous. Aston Martin have kind of found themselves a little bit lucky in that everybody else has fallen back a touch as well. You know, they haven't been able to capitalize on the fact that Aston Martin have fallen back so much, because they've also fallen back a little bit and are still behind Aston Martin on average. So you can see the Williams car there with its new upgrade in the Netherlands. Obviously, we didn't get to see it fully because Alex Albon was disqualified and then had to start from the back of the pack. But maybe this weekend, we'll see what that new Williams car really does have on a track that should suit the Williams car as well. We remember the Williams car being an absolute monster when it came to straight line speed advantages before they kind of moved towards this more generic car. So hopefully they've been able to at least keep a little bit of that straight line speed performance whilst they've been moving towards a car that is a bit more all around. RB and Haas, I thought they'd be a little bit closer, to be honest with you. You can see the RB just kind of stretching out in front of the Haas car. I don't know whether that's because this takes into account Kevin Magnussen and Nico Hulkenberg. It does feel like the gap between those two has been quite large this season, but Nico Hulkenberg feels like he's kind of got the run at it quite a lot of the time. So I don't know where this RB Haas data has come from. That's the one I kind of question the most, I would guess. Alpine, makes sense that they've moved forwards, not as much as maybe you'd hope, but moved forwards nonetheless, and Kick Sauber, as you can imagine. I mean, off the screen there behind my head, but have just been absolutely nowhere throughout the entire season. Their upgrade in Hungary didn't seem to work. They have gone really big for this weekend, which I feel like is quite interesting. Whether or not they'll actually be able to do anything with that information, we'll have to wait and see. They've gone super, super low downforce for this weekend, and they look to be the best in a straight line in some of the free practice sessions. So maybe, just maybe, we'll see something from the Sauber. Maybe a point for Bottas, just something to celebrate in what has been an absolutely disastrous season. I feel like that's only going to happen, to be fair, if everybody else throws it away. Oh, we're getting some predictions into the chat already. I'm just going to show you this very quickly as well. Before you get your predictions, you might want to have a little look at this. So this was the Belgian Grand Prix, the top speed of each of the cars. And the fact that, you know, we can look at this data and have a little think about who is going to be able to maybe get past into the DRS detection zones. I think it's quite interesting that at Belgium, which was a track that was absolutely dominated by Mercedes, they had the slowest top speed of everybody with DRS. If you look here, this line here is their top speed without DRS, without any kind of tow, without DRS. And actually, they sit a little bit above almost everybody. I don't know if I can do like perfectly straight line across. Not quite. But they sit a little bit above everybody just in terms of where that straight line speed was for the Mercedes car in Belgium. And that's quite interesting. Also thought it was quite interesting that Alpine are supposedly really good in a straight line without any DRS advantage. So we might see kind of Pierre Gasly, maybe Esteban Ocon able to get a few overtakes done over the course of this weekend. Aston Martin with the DRS were the fastest in Belgium. But this also doesn't take into account Ferrari's new Monza-specific update. And I feel like that'll bump Ferrari up this list a good chunk. I feel like it's quite interesting, though, that a lot of the top teams aren't just going for straight line speed. I think because they realize that they don't need to make all of those positions up during a Grand Prix, whereas the guys towards the back of the pack are like, you know what, we're fighting each other, and generally speaking, we're just going to be able to get in front of one another if we do well enough. It was interesting that McLaren was up here. Didn't feel like McLaren were able to do any overtakes whatsoever. We had Oscar stuck behind a couple of people. Lando obviously getting stuck in the mix, and Max Verstappen actually getting the jump on Lando Norris. Lando Norris, remember, finished 6th in Belgium. So interesting that McLaren were so high here. And they've got, they're pretty much running the same Belgium setup for this weekend as well. So that'll be fun to see. And I feel like this will give us at least a little bit of understanding, because most teams, I feel like, outside of Ferrari, who have got a brand new big update, Sauber have also brought a brand new big update for this weekend specifically. Everyone else is pretty much running their Belgium setup. So I feel like top line speed, we're going to see Mercedes, maybe Ferrari still have the best of it. Red Bull still really struggling in comparison to the rest, but might be able to make up for that in the corners. You can kind of make up for it in the corners at Belgium a little bit more. Then Monza is also a track that I back Max Verstappen to be fairly decent at. And then you've got the baseline speed of the McLaren, but with that DRS advantage, maybe the McLaren, even if it doesn't manage to get right up to the top end in qualifying today, will be able to eventually make up those positions in the race. But of course, speed isn't everything. There are still corners at Monza. We do have to remember sometimes, because Monza is talked about as if it is almost a straight line, and we talk about the cars, you know, ripping drag off and making sure the wings are as skinny as possible. They do still need to do the 11 corners of the circuit, even if a few of them aren't really that taxing on the cars. Ferrari is not gonna cook, says Speed. Ooh. How am I making these graphs? A few of them I nab from various places. A few of them I make myself, you know. Just chuck them in Excel, that kind of thing. Just to be safe. Just to be safe, if I'm wrong, I will say Sainz to take the win. Ooh. Sainz to take the win in his final year in front of the Tifosi as well. That would really, I don't know how the Ferrari fans would, well, obviously they'd go absolutely mental because it's Ferrari on the top step of the podium, but knowing that Carlos Sainz is then leaving, and knowing that Carlos Sainz has brought quite a lot of the wins that Ferrari have had in recent years, be interesting to see. Ferrari can't lose this. They can't get screwed up by strategy. Should we have a little look at it then? Do you want to have a look at some qualifying lap times? Because let's have a look at Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc's fastest lap times in free practice 3. Now, this was obviously not the absolute rip-roaring qualifying pace that we'll see, but it was pretty close. They were both on a set of soft compound tyres. It was both towards the middle / end of free practice 3. They were both absolutely going for it. And you can see, I think the Mercedes, the same as Belgium, even with Charles Leclerc having that new Monza upgrade, just isn't quite there. You can see, actually, the Ferrari, oops, gone on to rubbing out mode. The Ferrari has got the top line speed advantage. The Ferrari is always that little bit higher in terms of those peaks when it comes to the straight line speed. So between turn 1 and turn 2, where you've got that push towards turn 4, then through turn 4, you can see actually Charles Leclerc was very deep in braking for turn 4, actually made up quite a bit of time because he was so deep in braking, but you see loses all of that time straight away. So doesn't really gain that time actually in real life. It's just the way that the telemetry is put together. Then you can see he is getting closer through like turn 6, turn 7, starts to touch through turn 8 as well. They're almost identical in their lap time. Charles Leclerc 0.002 or something outside of what Lewis Hamilton was able to do. But Lewis Hamilton, I feel like this is where the Mercedes is going to come to its own, is able to get back on the accelerator that little bit earlier, is able to get out of the corners with a little bit more momentum, a little bit more emphasis behind him. You can see that most perfectly in turn 8, I feel. Charles Leclerc just having to go that little bit slower to get around turn 8, 9, and 10, where Lewis Hamilton almost cutting through that kind of left, right, left really seamlessly and able to get down on the power, carry that power through, push the Mercedes car to its limits, and that is then where, in that straight, Lewis Hamilton is able to gain that momentum back. And pretty similar, almost identical through turn 11, although again, Charles Leclerc, the faster top speed going into turn 11, and then braking into turn 11, pretty much identical. Charles Leclerc again, just having that better straight line speed. So the Ferrari is quicker in a straight line. Definitely quicker in a straight line. You can see Charles Leclerc peaking every single time. Don't know whether Lewis Hamilton had a little bit of a toe, because Hamilton kind of matching Leclerc on the straight does feel a little bit like maybe there was a helping hand there, considering Charles Leclerc is so far clear in all of the other straights. But Lewis Hamilton's just able to get back on the accelerator that little bit earlier. Turn 4, 5, turn 8, turn 11, just showing that Lewis Hamilton's able to get there much, much quicker. Birthday win for Carlos. Is it Carlos Sainz's birthday? Did not know that. I'm going to keep watching this stream on my phone and watch quality on my iPad. I mean, that makes sense. Can I upload links here? Possibly. Maybe. But let's have a little look. So let me show you actually behind that. Ooh. Yeah, that too. This is where I was talking about. So Lewis Hamilton's just able to get back on the power that little bit quicker. So coming down the straight, this is why I feel like Lewis Hamilton had a toe. I wasn't 100% sure because I didn't get to see the onboard of the lap, unfortunately. But the fact that Lewis Hamilton is quicker down this straight, but then once you get to actually kind of turning in, I feel like Leclerc's a little bit later on the brakes, but also has that little bit more top line speed. But Hamilton just able to get out of the corners. And this is where the Mercedes and Hamilton really came to their fore. Just able to get out of the corners quickly, get that power down, really just push the car at the exit of turn 2 and get the grip of those Pirelli tyres working in your favour. And then you can see Hamilton has the advantage all the way through until it's that top speed. So it's just the top end. Top speed advantage goes to the Ferrari in every single one of these circumstances. Every time they manage to get the power down, although the Mercedes car is getting the power down quicker, getting onto the straights, as soon as the actual top end of the straights come, the Ferrari does have the advantage. But once again, Lewis Hamilton on those quicker, gets the advantage out of the corners. Going round the corners, so you got turn 6, turn 7 here, then making it around. Again, the Mercedes quicker out of the corner, but slower once it comes to the top line speed. So that's going to be the battle. That's going to be the real back and forth that we're going to see throughout qualifying. And that means it's just going to change. We're going to see possibly, purple sectors from the Ferrari, purple sectors from the Mercedes, distributing those between each of them and almost swapping between. Okay, it's going to be Ferrari going quicker through the first sector, then maybe Mercedes making it back through turn 6, turn 7 in particular. I feel like the Mercedes cars got the advantage. Then the Ferrari's going to come back at him through this, but the Mercedes able to carry more speed through turn 8, turn 9, turn 10. So it's going to be super close all the way down to Ascari in turn 11. And it's going to be those fine margins once again. It's exactly what we want in qualifying. Really close battles. Really tight margins between those two top teams. And Mercedes and Ferrari, for me, are the two cars to look out for. And the reason I say that, and the reason I'm not including the McLaren in there, is just because I was looking at the top line speed of Oscar Piastri. And although McLaren have made their car a lot more aero efficient in recent weekends, and much more aero efficient than it was at the beginning of the season, and better in a straight line, like even the Mercedes had that kind of top line speed advantage. So it just feels like the Merc here has that top line speed advantage, is able to be even quicker than Piastri in the McLaren car, and still had that little bit of advantage out of the corners as well. Obviously, Piastri, I don't know if there was a little error from Piastri somewhere, sort of down towards turn 4, because again, it's that similar kind of thing. I feel like Hamilton, though, does take quite a different line to everybody else through turn 4 and turn 5, which gives us this little peak, because it was actually the same on Charles Leclerc's, where Charles Leclerc sort of breaks that little bit later and then lost the speed out of the corner anyway. It's the same for Oscar Piastri here. So Oscar Piastri kind of diving into that corner a little bit later, but coming out of it and just maintaining the fact that he's out of it. But basically, the only time Oscar Piastri was really slower than Lewis Hamilton was out of turn 2. And that's, again, that Mercedes car getting the throttle down earlier than everybody else, getting the traction out of turn 2, just having that advantage there. And that's basically where Oscar Piastri lost his time. And then it was almost identical to the McLaren. So although I do feel like the Mercedes and the Ferrari are the two to watch here, it's not out of the realms of possibility that the McLaren could be in the mix, but I just feel like it's going to be that little bit harder for the McLaren cars, and it's going to be a much cleaner and a much nicer lap required from the McLaren team if they're going to nab pole position here. Now, I might be completely wrong, because obviously this is only from free practice 3, and maybe, you know, the McLaren team were holding back a little bit or trying something different, and Ferrari were doing something different as well. But for me right now, if I was going to look at it, I would say that McLaren, maybe the third fastest, Ferrari and Mercedes, second, first fastest. Very difficult to guess who is going to be where. But you never know with the McLaren, because sometimes they do just turn up, don't they? And especially, I haven't even talked about Red Bull there. They can definitely turn up this weekend as well. And never put Max Verstappen down. Could be a Max Verstappen masterclass is the words I'm looking for. Max Verstappen masterclass puts in an absolute ridiculous lap time. We're all thinking, oh, actually, the Red Bull is more competitive than we ever thought. But I'd love to know your thoughts, though. Get your comments in. Not a Ferrari fan, but I do like the drivers. Yeah, same. Carlos Sainz, one of my favourite drivers on the grid. Really excited to see what he can do at Williams next season. Lando is great at qualifying. That is very true. So is Oscar Piastri, to be fair. I feel like Norris and Piastri both are pretty solid when it comes to qualifying. I'd say Piastri maybe even is the better qualifier, just because Lando Norris does have a few mistakes in him when it comes to qualifying, and that pressure sometimes. Not something that he's worked on, something that he's definitely getting better at, but towards the end of last season, I would say that really came to the fore, where Lando Norris was making quite a few mistakes in qualifying. Whereas this season, he's been better in qualifying and then just lost positions at the start. Although I feel like that's more of a McLaren thing than a Lando Norris thing. And a lot of people saying, Lando Norris bottles the start of Formula One races. I don't get, to be honest with you. I feel like the McLaren just isn't very well set up for the beginning of a race. And it's something that Red Bull actually did when they realized they were in for a chance at winning Grand Prix. They kind of went through the same cycle. I feel like we're seeing McLaren go for a very similar cycle where they're like, oh God, we're actually in contention for winning Grand Prix. Well, we haven't sorted out these things. And it's the minutiae that they hadn't sorted out. First half of the season, it was so many tactical errors and strategy errors from McLaren, pit stop errors as well, just not quite getting those right. And again, it's different when you're battling for 5th, 6th, 7th and battling for a win. They are different scenarios, and you have to react slightly differently. And McLaren had to learn that. Now they're realizing, like Max Verstappen did a few years ago, actually, you don't want to be losing positions right on the first lap or even down towards turn 1, because it just costs you all of that good work that you've put in qualifying. So Max Verstappen then went away, Red Bull went away, and they worked and developed and worked on those getting away from pole position, getting away from second, third place, and actually putting yourself in a position where you can gain positions on lap 1. And I feel like Lando Norris, McLaren are just realizing that same thing as well. So be interesting to see what actually comes on. No Max pole. I feel like Max pole position is a big shout at this point. The Red Bull has not looked quite at the level of the other cars. And also the Red Bull just not quite built for straight line speed. Like, you look at... Oh, no, that is the wrong graph. If you look at the Red Bull's straight line speed in Belgium, in comparison, you've got Red Bull Racing all the way down here as the 8th fastest team. However, you've got the Mercedes there, I guess, as the worst team overall. But is that like without DRS? Actually, when it comes to the racing. So maybe we could see Max Verstappen do something okay in qualifying, but then come race day to be under a lot of pressure, especially if somebody has DRS behind him. Although maybe that's what we want, right? We want Max Verstappen under pressure. We want Max Verstappen pushing it to the absolute limits. To be honest, no. McLaren have improved a lot throughout the summer break, and Red Bull have seemed to got slower. Max may put in a good time on the board, but not enough to get pole position from the two McLarens. I feel like the Ferraris are in the mix and the Mercedes are in the mix as well. A lot of people expecting a McLaren pole position, and a lot of the people, a lot of, wrong one. A lot of the news stories and a lot of the Formula One journalists obviously talking about whether or not Lando Norris can kind of get back-to-back victories. But I feel like Ferrari and Mercedes are right in the mix, you know. Mercedes were so quick in Belgium. I have to remember, they were so quick in Belgium. Belgium's a very similar setup to what you've got here. We've effectively got all of the cars in Belgium trim, and then they've just cut bits off. So literally, like you saw the front wing of the McLaren car, they've just cut a section off of their Belgium front wing. That's all they have done. So it's going to be very, very close. And then you just can't discount Ferrari because they brought a huge upgrade to this weekend. Of course, it's normally the Monza upgrade anyway. And they've brought the normal Monza upgrade. Then on top of the normal Monza upgrade, they've also fixed the floor, which is something that they've needed to do since Imola. So they've done two big steps in the right direction, I would say, Ferrari. One specifically for this track, but one just in general for the rest of the season. So going to be very, very tight. Very, very tight indeed. I wouldn't want to, put any money on who's going to get pole position today, to be honest with you. I feel like it's going to be very close. Hamilton, Leclerc, Norris, Piastri, I feel like they're all in the mix. And of course, never count out Max Verstappen. Can always just come up with a lap when he needs to. That's why he's a three-time world champion, He's been able to put in those qualifying performances when he's wanted to, when he's needed to, when the pressure has really been on. Really excited to see what Russell can get up to. That's also, I feel like Russell's a slight disadvantage, obviously missing out on free practice 1 and a little bit of free practice 2 because of that crash from Kimi Antonelli. He was quick in free practice 3 though, and obviously he was quick in Belgium, ended up winning the Belgian Grand Prix until he was disqualified. So yeah, George Russell definitely in the mix once again. Oh, people are asking. Okay, I'll show you what I mean by the front wing. I got a picture. Have I got a picture of... Oh, here you go. So this is the Aston Martin picture that I've got. So what I mean by the Belgium spec with a cutout is... Grab that. So these front wings, they've effectively taken the Belgian Grand Prix front wings and just taken a cut out of them. I'll show you this. This is the front wing of the Aston Martin. And you see a lot of the teams effectively running a lot lower apart towards the actual nose of the car itself. So normally the front wing looks like... Normally the front wing looks like this. Has more of that shape. They've got like a cutout here. So they've cut out a section of the front wing. And McLaren have done it even more so. If I show you on this bottom front wing, McLaren have almost got a droop like here, and they've just cut out this entire section of front wing. So they're running the Belgium front wing, they're running the Belgium setup, just with a literal chunk taken out of the front wing. But let's get into qualifying, shall we? Should we get set up bits and pieces? Quali board on the board. Here we go. Cars are getting set to go out on track. You love to see it. Set that. Oh yeah, we haven't talked about Colapinto. Goodness gracious me. Franco Colapinto in the Williams car. A minute left to go before we get underway in qualifying. No pressure on Colapinto, I feel like. Absolutely no pressure. As long as he doesn't bin the car, like Logan Sargent did in free practice 3 in the Netherlands, there should be no pressure on Colapinto, to be honest. Just getting through qualifying nicely would be nice. Lando or Lewis is getting pole. I feel like it's Lando, Lewis, or Leclerc. The L's. Lando, Lewis, Leclerc, all three of them in the mix for me, to be honest. Right, here we go then. 5 seconds until we get underway. If you are brand new here, if you could hit that subscribe button, that'd be absolutely amazing. We're about 2,000 subscribers off of 100,000. And I really want to get that plaque. Wouldn't you? Wouldn't you just love to see this space behind me filled with a silver play button? That's what could happen if you hit the subscribe button. Just saying. You specifically, John, Nathan, Daniel, hit the subscribe button. Do you remember when Corridor Crew used to do that? Does anyone know Corridor Crew? They used to do that. They used to just call out a name and say to hit the subscribe button in the hopes that somebody called that would be watching. Antonio in the chat. Hello, mate. Joined just in time as we're about to see Zhou Guanyu be the first driver to put in a lap time. Don't seem to have any data in terms of the radios. Let me give this a little rerun. Let's see if we can get the radio messages rolling in sometime soon. Did you know that they made the play buttons a lot smaller recently? I don't mind. I don't mind. I'll take a little one, a big one, a round one. Anyone you want. Where can I buy a legit F1 used helmet? Ooh, no idea. I don't have one. This is my dad's helmet. This is not a Formula 1 helmet in any way whatsoever. It's one of my dad's racing helmets. So just maybe be the son of a Formula 1 driver. Probably get quite a few of them then. Here we are then. Zhou Guanyu, as I said, is going to be the first driver to get us fully underway in qualifying. Ocon and Gasly behind in the Alpine cars. Don't really know what I expect from the Alpines this weekend, to be honest with you. The problem that Alpine have at this kind of circuit is obviously the engine deficit that they have to the rest of the Formula 1 grid, and the fact that isn't something that they could just easily rectify. You know, their engine is just slower. And when your engine is just that bit slower, it's a tough time, a tough ask to put in a stunning qualifying lap on a track that is effectively 4 straight lines. Zhou Guanyu getting us underway. Ocon and Gasly running down towards turn 1. Kevin Magnussen, Nico Hülkenberg about to join them. Carlos Sainz being the first Ferrari to come across the start-finish line, and Charles Leclerc also just behind the Spaniard. Ferrari, I feel like, will be setting the standard here in this first group of runners. Here come the Red Bulls, though. Verstappen and Perez leaving the garage right now, along with the 2 McLarens as well. So the Ferraris setting the standard, but Perez, Verstappen, Norris, Piastri all coming out on track to have their run at it. Carlos Sainz does go purple of anybody so far, so has beaten the 5 drivers ahead of him. Charles Leclerc slightly slower through the first sector. Carlos Sainz just so quick through that middle sector. Monza, I know it's called the Temple of Speed, but the onboards that you get in Monza, the top line speed of these cars, absolutely blitzing, and then down through turn 8, swoop through turn 9, through turn 10, almost flat through there now, obviously taking turn 8 and then just slamming onto the pedal as quickly as you possibly can through 9 and 10. Through Ascari now, up to turn 11. Charles Leclerc purple through the middle sector. It's going to be close between the 2 Ferraris. Hülkenberg the quickest so far, but here comes Charles Leclerc at 120.0. Oh, what happened to Carlos Sainz there? 123.5. A slow middle sector from Carlos Sainz. I thought we were on board. Didn't see what happened here with Carlos. Oh, just got into the gravel. Little snap as well. At turn 7. Good catch, though, from Carlos Sainz, to be fair. We saw Kevin Magnussen barrel into the wall there earlier on in the weekend. Saw a Liverpool ball in the background. You are correct. There is a Liverpool ball in the background. It's like a Where's Wally of stuff. And there's some Red Bull cans. There's a Beyblade, if anyone knows what Beyblade. Oh no, it's slightly out of shot in this shot. The Lego car. Various Lando Norris merchandise. Hey James, I'm working on a horror game. Would you like to be a voice actor? Think you would fit perfectly for a character I have in mind? I mean, yeah, sure. The problem that I have as a human being is I say yes to almost anything, so why not? Think Colapinto will be out in Q1? Yeah, but I don't think that's a massive, massive problem for him. He's only his first time in a Williams car in qualifying. Verstappen also goes a little bit wide at turn 7, almost does what Carlos Sainz did. Not quite to the extreme that the Spaniard did. And he's a 10th and a half through the middle sector is Verstappen. Carries a lot of speed, though, through turn 10 up towards turn 11. See how Verstappen lines up compared to the rest of the pack. Apologies that the radio transcript just doesn't seem to be... There we go. Shall I just reload that again? There we are. Let's load that again. Hopefully this time it will stay there. Max Verstappen, second fastest, 2/10 off. 10th and a half off Charles Leclerc. Gained a little bit in that final sector. Lando Norris then sets the standard 1.5 tenths quicker than Charles Leclerc, and the first driver to go into the 119s, or 119.9 from the British driver. Of course, the winner of the last Grand Prix in Zandvoort is an onboard with Oscar Piastri. Little mistake maybe down towards turn 1. And there is indeed, just gets a little bit too hot and actually has to go over turn 2. Just a little lock up, and then over the grass goes Piastri. That feels like they've got a little bit harsher. I know they've elongated turn 2 on the outside, but on the inside with the runoff area, used to be a lot less gravel and a lot less grass at the inside of turn 2, but Oscar lock up there, straight into the gravel, over the grass as well, and unfortunate for Piastri. He's not 30 seconds off the pace. That was just complete back out of that lap. We'll see him come round once again. Colapinto, though, a 120.0 so far for the Argentine. He's in the mix. He's ahead of Yuki Tsunoda, behind Daniel Ricciardo, just where you'd want the Williams car to be be honest with you. Alex Albon is also splitting one of their rivals. Hulkenberg in front in 4th, Magnussen down in 6th. We've still got some big players yet to come. Sainz and Piastri with mistakes on their laps still to come once again. Hamilton and Russell yet to set a lap time as well. In fact, George Russell just coming up towards turn 11 in the Mercedes. So we'll see what those two have got on offer. Fernando Alonso, Lance Stroll yet to set a lap time as well in the Aston Martins. Valtteri Bottas, the last man who we are waiting for also. Colapinto ahead of Sergio Perez. Exactly. Doing a good job. I feel like the comparison will be, the difference in qualifying compared to Alex Albon. And whether or not he's within touching distance where Logan Sargent couldn't be. Hot take, I think Bottas will score a point this weekend. I don't think it's completely out of the realms of possibility, just because they have brought an entirely new car effectively for this weekend. They've done a Ferrari and brought a Monza specific car. Not just an update or an upgrade that they can use later on in the season. This is like a one-off. This rear wing is only going to be useful for Monza. And they have done that this weekend at Stake Sauber, so we'll kind of see where they line up. Valtteri Bottas, it's not been incredibly slow in qualifying. It's just been the race pace of the Stake Sauber car has been nowhere close to anybody else. George Russell then coming through. Here we go. Let's see where the Mercedes line up, and that will give us a real idea of where the top 15 drivers are. Of course, in Q1, just looking for 5 drivers to drop out of qualifying. If you're 16th or below, you are not allowed to take part in Q2. Hamilton also coming around the final corner. And let's see then, Lewis Hamilton and George Russell slot in 4th and 5th. George Russell 4/10 off Hamilton, 5/10 off Lando Norris's lap time. Much further off the pace than I thought they were going to be honest with you. I thought it was going to be, Norris. I think I said the L's, didn't I? Lewis, Lando, and Leclerc were my 3 that would be properly in the mix for pole position before we got started. Lewis Hamilton just a bit adrift so far. Carlos Sainz, though, deciding that he is going to turn up to the battle. He's 0.3 of a second quicker than Lando Norris through the first sector. That is an absolutely monstrous first sector from Carlos. Maybe just doing that so he can take this middle sector a little bit easier. There was where he made the mistake last time. Gets through there cleanly this time. DRS down towards turn 8. The Ferrari, we know, is ridiculous in a straight line, and 7/10 up on Valtteri Bottas in 15th place. Obviously wanting to get himself out of the bottom 5. Oscar Piastri, by the way, has done another lap and put himself 6th fastest, so he is safe. Sergio Perez is the big name in the bottom 5 right now. Carlos Sainz about to add Valtteri Bottas to that list and go 3rd fastest overall. Carlos Sainz super quick through the first sector. Lost a little bit of time through the other sectors. Let me just actually have a little look at that sector from Carlos Sainz. So it's a 26.4. The Ferrari much quicker in a straight line and just doing that through the first sector. This is where I mean the sectors are going to be so important. I was expecting the Mercedes to be quicker in the final sector. Where's Russell 2nd, Hamilton 3rd. Hamilton 6th fastest in the final sector. I'll be honest, I was expecting it to go red, orange, blue in terms of the sector timings at the top of the timing sheets. Zhou Guanyu off the pace massively. Valtteri Bottas a lot slower through the first sector as well, considering that huge upgrade to the car. Colapinto pretty good in the first sector, just about matching Alex Albon. Just a little bit off it in the middle sector though, Colapinto. If you look, Albon 11th fastest to Colapinto's 18th. Then Albon and Colapinto not too far off one another, 13th and 15th in sector 3. Get back to the cars out on track then. Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc making their way back around. Gasly and Ocon as well. Alex Albon has gone out all by himself. Does like a little bit of clean air, doesn't he? Alex Albon. Colapinto waiting in the garage, wondering if he can. Currently the driver in 16th place, right on the fringe of being able to get through into Q2. A Q2 performance on debut in a Williams car would be absolutely stunning for the Argentine. Of course, is in Formula 2 throughout the entirety of this season so far, taking Logan Sargent's seat for the final 9 races. Despite being a McLaren fan, I kind of want Ferrari to win on their home ground. I know what you mean. A Ferrari win at Monza is something a little bit special. And I think they've only done it, twice in the last 15 or 16 years? Something along those lines. I can remember Leclerc winning here. I can remember Alonso winning here. Can't remember another Ferrari car standing on the top step of Monza in my bank of memory since about 2009, 2010 when I really got into Formula 1. Albon gets so much clean air because he doesn't get any in the race. That's very true. Albon often finds himself right in the mixture in the races, doesn't he? Maybe just likes to use this opportunity to get some clean air in front of him. And he is running around turn 3 all by himself. Everybody else in the garage waiting, wondering. Sergio Perez has come out to join Alex Albon. And again, just maybe wants to run in clean air all by himself. Sergio Perez all the way down in 19th. More than a second off the pace of Lando Norris. Is so tight in the bottom 5 though. Colapinto just 0.02 of a second slower than Ricciardo. Then less than a 100th again down to Yuki Tsunoda. I think he's 0.09 of a second slower than his teammate. It is super, super close, right on the fringe of being dropped out in Q1 and having your position Oh, it's a poor middle sector from Alex Albon. Hasn't improved on his previous middle sector time. Maybe it's going to get a second run at it. No, Alex Albon. 8th fastest overall. Pretty good final sector made up for that middle sector from Albon there. But the rest of the cars are now coming. Colapinto just coming around turn 4 and turn 5. Magnussen, Hulkenberg, Joe, Bottas, Stroll, Tsunoda, Perez is now on his flying lap. We'll have a little bit of traffic. Ricciardo behind. Piastri just making his way onto the track once again. Here's Max Verstappen coming out of the garage. Oh, Oscar Piastri nearly wipes out. Yeah, that might be an unsafe release for Oscar Piastri there. I think McLaren wanting to get the car in front of Verstappen and releasing Piastri not in the best of positions. Piastri is ahead of Verstappen out on track. You see Piastri coming around turn 4, turn 5. Verstappen just making his way round turn 3, although it is flat. I think that's going to be an unsafe release from Piastri. And another one of those little moments from McLaren where just another reminder that they haven't been in the position where they're properly battling for victories often, you know. It's just one of those things. What software do I use for the Formula 1 map and leaderboard? Multiviewer. Is there the little logos there for you, and also a little hat with Multiviewer on as well above my head. Here we go then. Colapinto just slightly slower through that first sector than he would have wanted to be, and slower than his previous lap time. Kevin Magnussen improving, Nico Hulkenberg improving as well. Oh, and Colapinto gets all out of shape. And that could have been very, very bad. But he's done amazingly well there, Colapinto, to snatch that car from the gravel at turn 7. And a really, really good save from the Williams driver. That will be probably him out of qualifying. But at least he's out of qualifying with the car still intact. He might be able to have one more run at it. Whether or not those soft compound tyres with a little bit of gravel mixed in will be as good. Oh, and Kevin Magnussen has gone off at Parabolica. Is that the car going slow? That's just a yellow flag in Sector 3. And that's bad news for anybody who's now coming around turn 11. Kevin Magnussen going slowly. Green flag has now been waved. Magnussen may be able to get that Haas going once more. Don't know what happened to Magnussen there, but everybody who's just come around turn 11 through that yellow flag is going to be a little bit frustrated by that. I think Colapinto has gone for another lap. I was looking at Kevin Magnussen to try and see. It's a real muddle of cars, actually, down towards turn 2. Ocon trying to go. Colapinto deciding to back out of it by the looks of things as Hulkenberg goes past. Daniel Ricciardo puts himself up into 15th spot then, so Colapinto is going to be out here, but Tsunoda, Stroll still in the mix. Oscar Piastri comes across the line 3rd fastest of anybody, with Norris and Leclerc still in the pits, as well as Carlos Sainz. Here comes Max Verstappen, who's gone purple through the middle sector. Goes 5th fastest overall, does Verstappen. Oh, Magnussen with a technical issue. Yellow flag then pushed. Okay, no penalties possibly. The white flag was waved, so they did know that they could get past Kevin Magnussen without slowing down too much. Lance Stroll not able to do enough in the Aston Martin. That is frustrating. So it's Tsunoda, Stroll, Colapinto, Bottas and Joe. Both of the Stakes Sauber cars still down there, even with the big upgrade packages that they brought specifically for this weekend. That's very, very disappointing, isn't it? Yuki Tsunoda, Lance Stroll also down there. Tsunoda, I think, will be frustrated to be beaten by his teammate by, what was it, 500ths of a second or so. Bottas and Joe right down there. Colapinto in 18th place on his first ever outing. My prediction of Franco P17, pretty good. Colapinto has the talent, but he doesn't have the best car. Oh, yeah, definitely. So, and I was saying, if he could get out of Q1, it would be absolutely incredible. The fact that, Albon is up in 8th place. The Williams car, don't get me wrong, I think does have the pace to get out of Q1, but he's just joined. He's literally just joined the track. Like, he didn't know he was going to be in that Williams car for this weekend until maybe 2, 3, 4 days ago. And that big pressure on Colapinto. He's done well. And to be fair, showed that he's not going to put it in the barriers. Did a really good catch as he was going through the gravel. So you have to respect that from Colapinto. But out in Q1, Tsunoda will line up 16th, Lance Stroll 17th, Colapinto 18th, and the 2 Stake Saubers at the back of the pack in 19th and 20th place. Becoming a little bit of a pattern for them, isn't it? Right at the back of the pack. And quite a chunk off the pace, to be honest with you. What were they? 2/10 off. Valtteri Bottas being able to get past Daniel Ricciardo. Yeah, 2/10. And then another 4/10 to Zhou Guanyu. Don't know what happened there for the Chinese driver, but absolutely nowhere in terms of their qualifying pace. If you are brand new to the channel, hit that subscribe button whilst we're waiting for Q2 to get underway with our top 15 drivers. And as always, if you could hit the like button as well, that'd be absolutely amazing. In fact, I haven't told you how many likes we are aiming for in this one. Shall I have a little look at how we did in qualifying for the Netherlands? The Netherlands Grand Prix qualifying, we managed 253 likes on the stream. We should definitely be able to be 253 likes on the stream for this one. I feel everybody hit that like button now. And then I think beyond that, Hungary maybe was the most liked qualifying of the season, if I can find it. Hungary. So the Hungarian Grand Prix qualifying had 472 likes. There you go. If you want this stream to be the most liked qualifying session of the season, 472 is the aim. If we could just beat, the Belgian Grand Prix got 250, the Netherlands Grand Prix got 250, so we should be beating that this weekend, shouldn't we? Let's have a little look. Oh, this is the Carlos Sainz mistake. Little bit of understeer through turn 7, just dips the rear end of the car into the gravel. Then Colapinto exactly the same, I'd imagine. Just coming around turn 6. Looks fairly good. Carries a good chunk of speed to turn 7. Just sliding, grabs onto the gravel. And as soon as you've got the car in the gravel, you lose all the traction on the left-hand side of it. Had to duck out of it. A really good save from Colapinto. We've seen much more experienced drivers dip into the gravel there and spin off into the barriers. Ooh. And the McLaren mechanic letting Oscar Piastri out. They're just showing that investigation there. Oscar Piastri under investigation at this moment in time. Lewis Hamilton also under investigation as well. Oh, Kevin Magnussen just says, oh my God, not really sure what we ended up having with Kevin Magnussen. He's through in 14th place. And just a little delay to Q2 while they sweep up some of the gravel that was put onto the track by one Kevin Magnussen. But both of the Hasses did make it through. Although Kevin Magnussen did kind of help them out a little bit. A lot of those cars going through the final sector, obviously seeing the yellow flags waved, seeing the white flags waved, would have slowed down a touch. Oh, and it's actually down where Colapinto went off and where Carlos Sainz went off at turn 7 for the gravel going across. And just a lot of guys with some brooms out on track, making sure that they sweep up as much of that gravel as possible. Very concerned for Hulk next year. Yeah, it's not looking good, is it? Not looking good at all. Stakes out. I mean, just anybody who's in a stakes out car next year, it's not looking fun, is it? Because they're all going to be focused on 2026 as well. Like, all of the focus of that whole team is just going to be looking at 2026 engines, 2026 aero. I think it's January next year that you're allowed to start looking at putting 2026 style cars into the wind tunnel. So I'd imagine they're just going to be doing that constantly. And it's going to be a pretty horrible year for anybody driving in a stake Sauber car for next season. If I were to gamble $100 on Joe Guan Yu being miles off the pace, I'd have been given 90 because it's such a shoe-in. Brooms as F1 engineer. I mean, what do you want from them? Do you want some sort of high-tech gravel maneuvering machine? Sometimes a broom is a broom, you know? Works, it works. Yeah, Q2 delayed because they're sweeping gravel off the track, as Antonio has just said. Stapping out in Q2. Probably not this one. Although speed 10, I think that will happen in Singapore. Of course, Singapore was an absolute nightmare for them last season. And that was when they were ridiculously quick. This season, looking better. Sorry, not looking any better for Singapore. And also, going to be a tough one. What we at? 221 like 30 more likes. There's got to be 30 people. Hit that like button before we get into Q2. Arrived late. Who went wide or crashed? Nobody went wide. Nobody went wide. But nobody crashed, sorry, is what I meant to say. Nobody crashed. Some people definitely went wide. We had Carlos Sainz go wide, Colapinto go wide at turn 7 and just push some gravel across the surface of the racetrack. Alpine Garage. Interesting. Trying to swap the tyres on Gasly's Alpine. Maybe deciding to go in a different direction. Or Gasly for Q2. Weird. Maybe they're just out of touch. Ooh, Lofi, thank you so much for the membership. A month already. It comes around very, very quickly, doesn't it? Thank you so much for becoming a member, though, mate. Massively helps out the channel in every single way possible. Allows us to invest in things like this. If any of you guys remember the streams from a couple of seasons ago, I can show you, like, this data telemetry, right? I used to do on Photoshop, and then whenever there was a grid position change, I'd have to type it in. And really quickly type it in. It was an absolute nightmare when somebody crashed from the front, because then I'd have to change everybody who was in each slot. Now, because of you guys, because you were able to invest in these different bits and pieces, because we're able to work and collaborate with people like Multiviewer, I don't have to type in the names of every Formula 1 driver every time there's a position change anymore. It's a dream. It's absolutely amazing. But thank you so much, Lofi, for becoming a member. Massively appreciated. Joe may likely stay at Kick Sauber. I feel like Bottas is just the better choice. In terms of money, I guess Joe Guan Yu is the better choice. In terms of just being a better driver right now in Formula 1, just feel like Bottas has still got the edge. And Joe Guan Yu just hasn't quite been able to get ahead of his teammate. I thought Mercedes were quick this weekend. I was expecting more. I was just looking at Belgium, right? I was looking at Belgium, looking across this weekend and thinking, oh, okay, it makes sense that the Mercedes car, because this is effectively a Belgium spec Mercedes car, will still be pretty damn swift. But although you got to remember, the Mercedes cars in Belgium, they did kind of come to the fore in the races that little bit more. So maybe actually what we should be looking at is if George Russell and Lewis Hamilton can qualify second, third, fourth, fifth in that kind of bubble, then maybe come race day they'll be able to move the car a little bit further forward. Also got to remember that the Mercedes car is so temperature dependent. Like, what they need is just a little bit of sun for a moment on the track. Why did I choose the Marina Bay circuit from behind you? I've just always really loved Singapore. Just really love the Singapore Grand Prix. And I think it's one of those tracks that's a bit more interesting to look at as well. I mean, I've always loved the Singapore Grand Prix. Definitely on the bucket list. One day I will go to the Singapore Grand Prix. Been to a few Grand Prix, but never quite as far as Singapore. Taya Porsche is actually there this weekend. There you go. There is the Sauber Academy driver, Taya Porsche. Watching on. Seeing both cars drop out of Q1. Anyhow, let's get into it then. We're going to finally see some flying laps in Q2. Cars back out on track. The track has been swept. They're ready and raring to go. What's the delay? There was a lot of gravel out on track at turn 7. They were just sweeping away. Here we go then. Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari. Going to get us underway once more. Charles Leclerc also in front. Pierre Gasly is going to get a lovely tow from Charles Leclerc, isn't he? And is also going to give a tow to his teammate Esteban Ocon. So, going to see a bit of a train there. Carlos Sainz around turn 6 and turn 7. A little bit more comfortably than he was before. Charles Leclerc slower than his teammate through that first sector. Lando Norris darts out of the way of his old teammate. Lando is going to be starting his flying lap fairly soon as well. Piastri is actually going to be the first McLaren to get himself across the start-finish line. Charles Leclerc has gone quicker than his teammate through the middle sector. And Nico Hülkenberg has just gone quickest of anybody through the first sector so far. It is used tyres for a lot of the cars out on track right now, not wanting to burn through too many sets of fresh softs. Charles Leclerc a 1:20.2, couple attempts off his first, his Q1 fastest time, but on a used set of soft compound tyres, you can see 8 laps completed on those soft compound tyres. Ooh, both of the McLarens on a fresh set of tyres. Norris and Piastri getting out there early. Verstappen also on a fresh set of tyres. Here comes Ricciardo and Gasly. Magnussen slots into third place. Ocon goes quicker than his teammate. These are the drivers that we're expecting to be right down there in that bottom 5. Nico Hülkenberg goes a 10th off the pace and goes quickest of that little bunch. Albon and Alonso still yet to come. Sergio Perez, though, goes third fastest of anybody so far in this Q2 session, still behind both of the Ferrari cars on those used tyres. Verstappen on a fresh set of tyres will be one to keep an eye on, though. Piastri's gone quickest of anybody through the middle sector, and the final sector goes quickest overall. Verstappen then has to slot into second behind him. Lando Norris was quickest through the first sector, improved through the middle sector, and goes quickest overall, just under a 10th quicker than Oscar Piastri, who slots into second. Verstappen then drops into third. Remember, those 3, though, were all on fresh sets of tyres. Everybody behind: Leclerc, Sainz, Perez, Hülkenberg, Magnussen, Ricciardo, Ocon, Gasly, all on used tyres for that first run-through. Alex Albon is about to get underway for the Williams team, and Albon on a used set of tyres. Gasly goes up into 9th spot, does another lap. Ocon also jumps in front of Daniel Ricciardo and up into the top 10. But here comes Alex Albon then on his used set of soft compound tyres. It's pretty damn swift from Alex Albon. Just a 10th off Lando Norris's time through the first sector. The Williams car, of course, being monstrous in a straight line. I'm expecting the Williams to be very good through the first and third sectors. Maybe struggling just a touch through this middle sector, although there is this straight as well. There's a lot of straights here at Monza. Alex Albon 0.3 of a second quicker than Esteban Ocon's current time in 10th spot. That'll get him out of the elimination zone by a good chunk of time. Pierre Gasly and Esteban Ocon were a little bit off the time. Lando Norris has to get out of the way of Alex Albon as he comes around. Albon just coming around turn 11. He's going to put this Williams car into the top 10, but whereabouts? Just behind Nico Hülkenberg. Between the two Haas cars, 0.7 of a second off the pace overall. It does get himself into that slot where he could be in the best of the rest, because I'm assuming, you know, both of those Mercedes jumping up into the top 6 and therefore dropping Perez probably down to around 8th place. There is 2 spots available. Of course, one of the Aston Martins in Lance Stroll already out. Here comes George Russell, 4th fastest for the first Mercedes. Fernando Alonso goes 10th fastest overall. And Lewis Hamilton takes top spot. A 119.6 from Lewis Hamilton on a fresh set of soft compound tyres for him. Very nicely done indeed by Lewis Hamilton. And there you go then, our top 8 as expected. Nico Hülkenberg and Alex Albon being the 2 drivers right now that have managed to get themselves into that best of the rest position in 9th and 10th. It would be Fernando Alonso, Kevin Magnussen, Pierre Gasly, Esteban Ocon, and Daniel Ricciardo, the 5 drivers to miss out on Q3, have if it were to end here. Carlos Sainz, though, wanting to get back into the mix, goes fastest of anybody through the first sector. Fresh set of soft compound tyres have gone onto Carlos Sainz's car and he wants to make the most of them. He's just a little bit off the pace of Lewis Hamilton through the middle sector. 0.02 of a second separating the current Ferrari man and the soon-to-be replacement. Final sector is what's going to matter here for Carlos Sainz. Charles Leclerc behind him is also improving through the first and second sectors. The Ferrari car trying to get to the top of the Italian Grand Prix podium, and it's not quite good enough for Carlos Sainz, 3rd fastest overall this time around. 0.15 seconds off Lewis Hamilton's time, and Charles Leclerc, although improved, still 3.5 seconds off the pace in 7th. Of course, doesn't matter too much right now. We're just looking for 5 drivers to drop out of Q2. It's looking fairly obvious. It's not going to be any of the top 7. You'd say that Sergio Perez is maybe under a little bit of pressure. He is 7.5 off the pace of Lewis Hamilton right now. So Sergio Perez might have another run at it. Nico Hülkenberg and Alex Albon, though, the 2 drivers that would be joining that top 8 that we expect. Charles Leclerc not very happy at all with the balance of his Ferrari car, saying that it's not turning at all in the Ferrari. Leclerc will get back to the garage before Q3. Want to have a little look at that if possible. Ferrari wanting to get everything right for their main man of the moment, Charles Leclerc. Will Lewis Hamilton go in there and become the team number 1, though? Massive, massive weekend for Ferrari in Italy. 5 minutes to go then here in this final session before Q3. Final lap times are upcoming. Everybody just making their way back around. Charles Leclerc, Carlos Sainz, the 2 Ferraris making their way into the pits. Oh, Ocon, Gasly, Magnussen and Hülkenberg going a little bit early, actually. My birthday is September 2nd after the Italian Grand Prix. Well, happy birthday. Well, I'll probably be live tomorrow if you want to drop in. But happy birthday for Monday if I don't do something live on Monday to wish you a birthday then. Ariosto, thank you so much for the membership, mate. Someone tell Lewis Lando needs to win. Very true. Although Lewis Hamilton celebrating his final year at Mercedes, he wants as many of those victories as he can get. Obviously, he's picked up 2 this season so far in Great Britain and Belgium. He'll want to make it even more, though, in the second half of the season to just thank the Mercedes team for delivering him 6 Drivers' World Championships. And obviously a 2021 season that went right down to the wire. Ocon and Gasly, interestingly, have swapped around. So Gasly will get the tow this time around from his teammate. Magnussen and Hulkenberg also with Hulkenberg behind. You'd imagine Magnussen will be giving the tow to Hulkenberg to make sure that one of those Hasses can at least get through. Oscar Piastri out on track behind the Hasses, maybe a little bit earlier than I was expecting to see him. Sergio Perez and Max Verstappen are just coming around turn 7 together. Daniel Ricciardo out on track for the RB team as well, as Albon and Alonso make their way to the end of the pit lane. So does Charles Leclerc as well. Ocon, though, is going to start a flying lap with Pierre Gasly behind Kevin Magnussen. No, sorry. Kevin Magnussen making his way past Ocon and Gasly. So maybe the Alpines going for a second lap to warm up their tyres. Interesting tactic from the Alpine setup. Hulkenberg also makes his way past the 2 Alpines and also past Charles Leclerc as well. Kevin Magnussen, though, a little bit slower through the first sector than he was before. 12th fastest overall right now. Hulkenberg with that little bit of slipstream from his teammate. It's actually gone purple in the first sector. Nico Hulkenberg absolutely flying around that first sector. Let's see if he can keep that up through the middle and final sectors. I'm expecting Hulkenberg. To be fair, if you were going to bet on one of the drivers from the midfield pack to get through to Q3, it'd be silly not to have Nico Hulkenberg on that list. He is, though, 2.5 tenths off Lewis Hamilton's time, finishing the second sector. Magnussen also slower through that middle sector than he was before. Kevin Magnussen trying to get into Q3, trying to displace Hulkenberg as the clear number 1 this season. And unfortunately, slots in 12th fastest anyway. Hulkenberg improves. It's a poor final sector from Nico Hulkenberg, actually. It cost him a little bit there. Hulkenberg still 7 tenths off the pace of Lewis Hamilton, but still 9th fastest overall. Here comes Sergio Perez, who is 8th fastest right now, but there's a clear gap between Leclerc and Perez. Perez, though, coming across the line, still 8th fastest overall. Did improve, but is still nearly 6 tenths off the pace. There's Verstappen across the line. Goes within 2 hundredths of a second slower than Hamilton. Daniel Ricciardo, it's 11th fastest for Ricciardo. Misses out on 19 thousandths of a second to Alex Albon, who is still currently holding on to 10th place and is improving, where Fernando Alonso is not. Alonso slower through the first sector than before. Albon, though, quicker through the middle sector. Alonso's made up for it in the middle sector. It's going to be a real battle between Albon and Alonso here. Of course, we've got Ocon and Gasly to come too, although Ocon slow through the middle sector and doesn't look like he's going to get that Alpine to within touching distance. That's how you do it if you're Alex Albon. Put yourself 9th fastest. That now puts Nico Hulkenberg under pressure. Hulkenberg has already done his lap. Here comes Fernando Alonso. No! He's 10 thousandths of a second off, 100th of a second behind Nico Hulkenberg's time in 10th spot. Fernando Alonso slots into 11th. Gasly and Ocon come across the finish line together and do not improve for the Alpine team. They're going to slot in 14th and 15th on the grid tomorrow. Fernando Alonso and Daniel Ricciardo Also out of this qualifying session, George Russell is just dialing in, maybe having a little go. Is he on a fresh set of tyres? No, used set of tyres for George Russell. Makes sense. He's not improving in the first and second sectors, but maybe just having a little run around. Remember, George Russell missed out on quite a bit of free practice time. So just getting himself into the rhythm a little bit. As George Russell didn't improve on his lap time. Stays sixth fastest, but all he needed to get through. Fernando Alonso will start agonizingly just outside of the point scoring places. It is Albon and Hulkenberg that join the top four teams in the point scoring places and in Q3 that we will get into in just a moment. Fernando Alonso will start just outside the points in 11th spot for Aston Martin. He'll start alongside Daniel Ricciardo, who will be in 12th place. We've got Kevin Magnussen, who will start in 13th for Haas. 14th place, Pierre Gasly for Alpine. And 15th place, his teammate just behind him, Esteban Ocon. They're the 5 drivers to drop out of Q2. They join Yuki Tsunoda, who will start in 16th place. Lance Stroll, 17th. Federico Colapinto in 18th place. Valtteri Bottas in 19th. And Zhou Guanyu in 20th spot. Looks like points are on the table for Danny Rick in the race tomorrow. Yeah, starting within touching distance. Again, that top 8 is pretty much locked in, unless, of course, there is an issue for anybody in that top 8. I would imagine we're going to see those 8 positions, well, in any order. Maybe Sergio Perez still in 8th, but the rest of them in any order that slots into tomorrow's Grand Prix. It's then the best of the rest, 9th and 10th place slots, isn't it? Albon starting best of the rest tomorrow. Nico Hulkenberg behind as it stands. Got the... Did I say Federico? Sorry, Franco Colapinto. Don't know where I was going. Haven't got used to it yet. He's still new to the grid. Bless him. Bless me. Got a lot of names to remember. Don't know where I got Federico from. How does Albon do this when his teammates are always last? I mean, unfortunately, he's had Logan Sargent as a teammate who really hasn't been able to click with Formula One, as he just hasn't quite been able to be at the level we were expecting from him. Still a very good driver there in Logan Sargent. If he can get into the right team in the right place, I feel like he will still have a fairly decent racing career, you know. And then Franco Colapinto in 18th spot. Again, it's his first qualifying session and a little mistake from him, to be fair. Had that mistake not happened through turn 7, maybe, just maybe, he'd have been able to sneak through to Q2. But yeah, Albon absolutely just stunning once again. Be interesting to see how Albon lines up against Carlos Sainz, won't it? Those two going absolutely hammer at one another throughout an entire season. Be great. Lewis will get pole. It's going to be close. Going to miss Sargent. Not so much. Which Formula 1 team do I support? Aaron Boy. Daniel Ricciardo. Honestly, that was about all I had. Yeah, and the team just realizing that they just didn't quite have enough to get Daniel Ricciardo into the top 10. But fairly happy with starting in 12th place. What's my opinion about Sauber? Just absolutely horrendous. The radio messages are not scrolling properly. Oh, sorry. I have been having some weird issues with them today. I'm not really sure why. Scroll up and down a little bit and see if I can just give it a little bit of a wake up. Let's do that. How long until Q3? Couple of minutes. Drivers are in the cars, getting ready and raring to go. Just seeing Alex Albon there. Through to Q3 again in a Williams. Of course, was through to Q3 last time out before the disqualification. Hopefully the flaw of that Williams car within spec. By the way, if you didn't see, he was 0.3 millimeters out. 0.3 millimeters out in terms of the volume of the floor being outside of the regulations. That was the only thing that cost Alex Albon an opportunity of starting in the points in Zandvoort. The floor being 0.3 millimeters too wide. Goodness me. Has a bit of penalty for Oscar? Not as of yet, actually. I double check. Should we have a little look? Doesn't look like there's going to be, actually. Under investigation, then got a little red tab next to it. So no penalty for Oscar. Yeah, completely forgot about that. Good point. Obviously, that unsafe release being not quite unsafe enough for some at the steward's office. Did seem like a pretty hard and fast penalty, but there we are. Who's better, Latifi or Logan? Logan. Yeah. Nicholas was not the one for me. Do I like Oscar? I do. I love Oscar. I think he's doing absolutely amazing. I think Colapinto is better than Sargent, yet to be seen. But Sargent this season was just falling apart, wasn't he? So I would hope so. This time the floor will be 0.03 nanometers too wide. They measure it with a laser scanner, I think, or something along those lines. Like, is a laser measuring system. So it is literally like nanometers that they can measure to. And it's absolutely insane. What caused Colapinto to be P18 and Albon Q3? Little tiny mistake from Colapinto. It was a moderate mistake. Wouldn't say little tiny anymore. A moderate mistake from Colapinto as he was going around turn 7. Just dipped his tyres into the gravel. Bumbled his way across the gravel a little bit and just cost him a good chunk of time in that Williams car. But did really well not to put it in the wall, I would say. Here we go then. We're going to get underway in Q3. The real business end of qualifying is up and coming. Hamilton was fastest overall in Q2. Verstappen just behind. But it is going to be a real fight between 4 top teams that we've got in Formula 1. Honestly, I feel like this could go any way. It could be Hamilton, could be Norris, could be Leclerc, could be Carlos Sainz, could be Max Verstappen, could be George Russell. Any of them in the mix there. Lando Norris, though, the last time out, was on the top step of the podium. I'll be hoping that he can do it once again. This fight for pole is going to be tense. Really is. It really, really is. Of course, it was not an unsafe release. Max followed the rules and yielded to the right. Yeah. That's pretty good, actually. About the horror game, how can they contact you? Yeah, probably through Insta. All of my links are down in the description. Any of those, I'll try and have a look after this. I think Colapinto will perform better than Sargent. Yet to be seen. But well, one, the Williams car is just going to be better in this second half of the season because they've got the upgrades on. But I'm not 100% like he's going to be destroying Logan Sargent, you know. Like, Logan Sargent hasn't got any points. Oh my goodness me, Max Verstappen again. It's Carlos Sainz this time released out in front of Max Verstappen's car. Max Verstappen just cannot catch a break in the pit lane right now. Max Verstappen is going to be wary of every time he's pulling out of the garage now. There's always a car seemingly cutting in front of him. That'll probably be a fine for the Ferrari team, I'd imagine. And a fine for the McLaren team as well for the one earlier on. Here we go then. We're going to get underway in qualifying. Albon is going to get us ticking over. Nico Hülkenberg is going to be second across the start-finish line. Then Sergio Perez. Piastri next. Norris is fourth. Carlos Sainz is going to be fifth across the line. Then Verstappen. Then Leclerc. And the 2 Mercedes cars are going to be right at the back of the pack. Will they be able to put themselves onto provisional pole. Lewis Hamilton was quickest in Q2. Can he do it once again in Q3? He is going to be the last man across the start-finish line. Albon coming around to turn 7. Hulkenberg looking pretty good through the first sector again, Nico Hulkenberg. Sergio Perez, though, in the mix for the Red Bull. Piastri and Norris just coming through turn 1 and turn 2. Piastri making his way down to turn 4. Piastri, quickest of anybody through the first sector so far. See if Lando Norris can get close to his teammate's time. He does indeed, and Lando Norris goes quicker than Oscar Piastri through that first sector. The Ferrari of Carlos Sainz is next, and Sainz then goes quicker through the first sector by over a tenth, actually, to Lando Norris's time. Verstappen can't match the first sector of Carlos Sainz. Charles Leclerc, though, also coming through that first sector. Albon completing his lap at 120.8. Hulkenberg completing his lap at 120.4, both on used tyres. Sergio Perez on used tyres as well as a 120 dead in the Red Bull. As the rest of the cars that we're interested in, the soft compound tyre runners on fresh sets. Here comes Oscar Piastri then, a 119.4 from the first McLaren across the line. Lando Norris following. Isn't fastest of anybody so far in any of the sectors, but goes purple in the third sector. A 19.4 from Norris puts him top of the timing sheets. Here comes Carlos Sainz, goes third fastest in the Ferrari. Max Verstappen is going to be next, only fifth fastest behind his teammate, Max Verstappen. Charles Leclerc crosses the line, fourth fastest overall. Here come the Mercedes cars then. Russell and Hamilton. Haven't been vintage first and second sectors from either of them. Not fastest of anybody so far. Hamilton making his way behind his teammate. It's going to be Russell across the line first. And it's a 19.5 from Russell, goes third fastest. Hamilton then going across the line. Fourth fastest for Lewis Hamilton. And 0.2 of a second off the pace. McLaren with a 1-2 at the beginning here. Could be another dream weekend for McLaren incoming if it stays like this. 6 minutes still left to go in this final qualifying session. I was expecting the Ferraris and the Mercedes to be a little bit closer than they are, to be honest, to Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri. Just looking at the free practice 3 times, but maybe McLaren were just holding a little bit back in free practice 3. And now we're seeing the real venom that this McLaren car has. Norris tops the timing sheet so far. Piastri in second, just 0.03 of a second off of his teammate. And Max Verstappen not happy at all. Had no grip at all on this set, says Max Verstappen. And that's put him 8th of the top 8. Nico Hulkenberg sneaks ahead of Alex Albon in that battle of best of the rest. But Lando Norris is the best of the best so far. I'm telling you, Lando used some black magic, so Red Bull will not be as good as before. Ooh. That order, so aesthetic. Yeah, 2x2 at the minute. 2 McLarens, followed by 2 Mercedes. 2 Ferraris on the third row of the grid. And the Red Bulls, not somewhere that they have been very often in recent memory. 7th and 8th place on the grid. Max P8, Lando winning the Grand Prix. Remember, Lando Norris just needs to average 8 points on Max Verstappen. He did exactly that in Zandvoort. And I mean, when it's average 8 points, it means there's going to be a few races where he does need to outscore Max Verstappen by like 15 points. Like, there's going to be a good few. If this Drivers' Championship is to warm up in the way that I'm hoping it will, we need a weekend or two where Max Verstappen truly is 7th, 8th, 9th. And that does not happen because Max Verstappen, even on a bad weekend, usually comes in the top 5. Like, you look at his record so far this season, Max Verstappen has very nearly never been outside of the top 5. Perez ain't getting pole in 1,000 years. Well, yes, let's, we know that. But I feel like it's still a good battle here. I feel like Charles Leclerc has been really out of sorts in comparison to where I thought he was going to be. I thought the Ferraris would be much, much closer to the McLarens, but 0.3 of a second, the gap there. 0.2 of a second to the Mercedes cars, like a good buffer for the McLaren team to work with. And we're going to go into this final qualifying battle with it all to play for at McLaren, Mercedes, Ferrari, and Red Bull. Sally Miller says, please like the stream. And, you have to listen to what Sally says. An absolute OG of the channel. Thank you very much, Sally. I don't know what likes we're on. We're on 295. We are 5 likes off 300. Ridiculous if we don't get to 300, isn't it? Make sure you hit that like button and get into it. Subscribe to the channel if you're new as well. We're very, very close to 100,000 subscribers. This grid lineup is making me excited as well. I cannot wait. What software am I using? I'm using Multiviewer. It's free as long as you've got Formula 1 TV. In the UK, it's like 20 quid a year, I think, or something like that. But Multiviewer, well worth it. If you want some onboards, some live telemetries, and all of the stuff that you can see here as well. Here we go then. The final run for these cars. Sergio Perez and Max Verstappen, the 2 Red Bulls, deciding they want to get out there first of anybody. Hulkenberg and Albon then behind in the Haas and the Williams, trying to fight for that best of the rest 9th place slot. Norris and Piastri in the McLaren cars, then making their way to the end of the pit lane. Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc in the Ferraris behind, which means the 2 Mercedes cars are once again going to be back of the pack, last across the line, and the tension is going to rise dramatically in the last 2 minutes of this qualifying session. Could go either way here. Lando Norris currently looking like he is going to start another Grand Prix on pole position, and looking like the win in Italy is within touching distance. Oscar Piastri starting beside him tomorrow would be a massive help, especially because Lando has struggled with starts in recent weekends. McLaren has started really poorly in recent weekends, but here we go then. Verstappen, the man we've got our eyes on. Perez has also started a flying lap as well, but Max Verstappen through the first sector. Keep an eye on his lap times and see whether or not he can close that 0.6 of a second gap that he had to Lando Norris through the first run. A fresh set of softs on that Red Bull car. He's 0.008 of a second off Lando Norris's lap time. And even though that was a poor first sector from Verstappen, didn't improve on his previous first sector, it's the middle sector that was the real problem for Verstappen before. Sergio Perez has gone wide at turn 7, kicked up some dust, and actually caused Verstappen to be a little bit unsighted through turn 7 because of that dust that he's kicked up. Verstappen a 10th or 2 off of Lando Norris's time through the middle sector. Doesn't look like Verstappen is going to improve. Lando Norris, though, coming down towards turn 4, also doesn't improve on his lap time. Sergio Perez just moves out of the way of his teammate. Verstappen trying to get to within touching distance of the Drivers' Championship, but just can't do it. Verstappen, only 7th fastest, is still 0.6 of a second off. Sergio Perez comes into the pits for Red Bull, and Lando Norris now going even quicker than himself. A purple middle sector from Lando Norris. Carlos Sainz has also gone purple in the first sector for Ferrari. Although Verstappen is out of the running, it's not over yet. Alex Albon has gone quicker than Nico Hulkenberg to take that best of the rest slot. But here's Lando Norris through the final corner. It's a 1:19.4. Will he improve? He does. A 1:19.3 from Verstappen. From Lando Norris, takes the checkered flag. Oscar Piastri coming around. Does he improve his time? No. stays a 10th off of his teammate and second fastest right now. Here comes Carlos Sainz, and it's only third fastest for the Ferrari. After a purple first sector, Charles Leclerc just a touch quicker than his teammate. 0.06 of a second separate the two Ferraris. He slots into third place behind. George Russell's had a really mixed middle sector. Doesn't look like the Mercedes cars are going to be able to close that 0.2 of a second gap. George Russell doing his absolute best, though. Round the final corner he goes. The Mercedes crosses the line. Third fastest for the Mercedes of George Russell, but still that 0.1 of a second off. And Lewis Hamilton, 6th fastest overall in the Mercedes. Lando Norris, take a bow, is another pole position for the Brit. Lando Norris will start at the front of the pack. Oscar Piastri behind in second place. A 1-2 for McLaren here in qualifying. George Russell upsetting the Tifosi at the end there and taking the final podium space in front of the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc, who'll start in 4th. Carlos Sainz will be on the 3rd row of the grid in 5th place. Lewis Hamilton 6th. Then it's Verstappen and Perez, and all Red Bull 4th row of the grid. When's the last time we said that about Red Bull? Alex Albon taking that best of the rest slot in his Williams in 9th, and Nico Hülkenberg will start inside of the points just in 10th place. A very, very tight qualifying battle at the end there. The guys that we missed out on during Q2, Fernando Alonso ended up 11th fastest. Daniel Ricciardo will start beside him in 12th. Kevin Magnussen 13th, with Pierre Gasly 14th, and Esteban Ocon in 15th place. They were the 5 drivers to drop out of Q2. And then the drivers that dropped out in Q1, the 5 drivers at the back of the pack: Tsunoda in 16th, Stroll 17th, Colapinto 18th, and Bottas and Joe make it an all-stake Sauber final row of the grid. Thank you guys so much for watching. Massively appreciate all of the help in recent streams. Been absolutely wonderful to be joined by you all. We'll be back live once again tomorrow for the Monza Grand Prix. Step 1 for Lando Norris complete. Step 2 still yet to play out. Thank you once more, and I'll see you tomorrow.